Hi, Analisa Six here with Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to give you the 2023 April horoscope for the sun and rising sign of Scorpio. I said it, I did it. Yay, let's jump right in. It's April, it's Aries season. Aries is the sign that's also ruled by Mars besides Scorpio. So I feel like Aries and Scorpio kind of share similar Martian kind of dynamics in very different ways. I'm recording these late. It is currently April 8th. And so some of the energy that we had at the beginning of the month, we've already moved past. So we had started out April with Mercury in Aries, and now Mercury has moved into Taurus. And so Taurus is the polar opposite of Scorpio. So in the zodiac, we all have opposites. And Scorpio is the fixed water sign, and Taurus is the fixed earth sign, and they rule the 8th house. Scorpio rules the 8th house, and Taurus is over here ruling the 2nd house. So we have kind of that energy in Taurus right now that's pulling, in the opposite direction of Scorpio. And I just actually spent a lot of time in the Libra horoscope talking about polarity in the birth chart. So I'm going to try not to go too much off of another tangent, but it's still relevant because you have a lot of polarity happening in your chart. And so what happens a lot of times when we have energy that's pulling us in the opposite direction of our sun energy is it can feel like we're a little bit imbalanced if we're unfamiliar with the energy that's opposing us. Some people are wired to have both energies. I've actually had a lot of Scorpio Taurus polarity dominance in my life where like their rising and moon will be in Scorpio and Taurus, or their sun and moon will be in Scorpio and Taurus, or flipped, Taurus sun, Scorpio moon, that kind of stuff. And if you're one of those people where you have that balance, you might feel more integration between the two signs. So when you read things about Taurus, they're relevant for you. When you read things about Scorpio, they're relevant for you. But if you're a Scorpio that doesn't really have any Taurus energy in your chart, when there's planets in Taurus, it might feel kind of uncomfortable because everything's pulling you into the exact opposite of what you normally are comfortable in. But there's a lot of opportunity when we have the ability to be more present in the polarity of our energy to learn how to be more balanced and integrated on a whole as a whole person. So it's really positive, but it can still be difficult for some of us to manage if we don't have a lot of that energy. I used the example in the Libra one with me where I'm a Leo, and so Aquarius is the opposite of my sign, but I don't have anything in Aquarius planetary wise. I have my North Node in Aquarius, but it's not the same as having planets in Aquarius. And so when Aquarius season used to be one of my seasonal depression seasons. And now that I've worked a lot on integrating Aquarius energy into my life, and I also live in Southern California where the sun's out all the time, I don't have as much seasonal depression as I used to. But, it's hard for me because I don't have any planets pulling me into Aquarius. So it's not a comfortable energy for me. It's not. It really is not. So that's an example of how that can kind of manifest. So where Aries has been hitting in the chart for the Scorpio individual is the area that rules health and also your routine. So this has been a really positive time from March through April so far for you to get really clear on your structure, your mundane routine. And, if you're procrastinating or not taking care of business, the consequences of those actions might catch up to you during more of the kind of retrograde seasons, so it's good for you to kind of try to get on top of the things in your day that make the long-term effects of your health and your life better. So having a good, health routine, workout routine, things that help you with your, having Aries in this area also makes you more prone to headaches or migraines. And so there's things, that can help you unwind, that help, managing stress, things like that help prevent those things. That you've been kind of called to have to integrate more. Now that Mercury's in Taurus and not in Aries anymore, hopefully that'll help kind of move some of that energy in terms of headaches away, because now you have more of this highlight on your relationship. And so Mercury and Venus are currently in Taurus, but Venus is about to move into the area of the chart that has to do with marriage and shared resources. And it's going to be entering the sign of Gemini on the 11th. But Mercury is going to be staying in the sign of Taurus until June. And so Mercury in the in the area of the chart that represents romantic partnership, best friends, and also business partnerships, shines a big light on how you communicate in your relationships. And so, you know, since we have Mercury stationing retrograde on the 21st, there's going to be communication conflict probably in best friend relationships and partnerships. And, you know, Taurus has a lot to do with money and shared resources. When it comes to relationships, you know, like how we nurture each other with gifts or food or physical touch and sensuality, like that's a huge theme when we have Taurus in this area. And so there might just be a lot of communication around that, or even perspective changes around that. And then Venus entering Gemini in the area that represents shared resources, with marital partners or banks or family, like money through family, inheritance, that kind of stuff is all highlighted. And Venus is really positive in this area. Venus brings a lot of resolution here. It brings, you know, kind of this desire to connect with your partner in a way that is, you know, Gemini is, you know, ruled. It's interesting because we've got Mercury in the sign that Venus traditionally rules, and Venus in the sign that Mercury traditionally rules. So they're kind of like communicating with each other and bringing this stuff together. And for you, it's in the area around shared resources and money, sex, and pleasure and relationship. Like all of that's highlighted for all of April, and you're working through all of those themes for all of April. So it's a big theme, and there will be some conflict, but Venus is there to help you make it smooth and easy and resolved. Mars is in Cancer right now, and it's going to be in Cancer for the whole month of April. And that's going to be influencing the area of the chart that has to do with your belief systems and values. And so you might be in a position where you're reflecting a lot on what emotional, because you know, it's in Cancer. So Cancer has to do with our emotions. And then it's in an area around belief systems. And so this has to do with how we are emotionally vulnerable and our belief systems around what vulnerability is. And, you know, water signs are very spiritual as well. So, you know, having Mars in a water sign in a spiritual house or a belief system house, you know, could bring up our emotional connection to those things. And, you know, we might be feeling like some skepticism is, you know, abound, and maybe it's preventing us from really opening up or being vulnerable, because Mars can kind of have that element to it. Mars is your ruling planet, you know, so you might be in a place where you're also trying to work on what empowers you emotionally and how you share yourself emotionally and how you're vulnerable. Hopefully there's some breakthroughs with that, because Mars, you know, in this area might help you have some aha moments with some of the things that you're working on in a deeper way. Pluto and Venus are going to be making a trine on the 11th when Venus enters Gemini. And so again, that's pretty harmonious for kind of having some breakthroughs or transformational conversations in your relationship around shared resources, and also the way that you negotiate your home and family space. It's interesting, like the home and family, Pluto is really highlighting, and then Venus during this time is really highlighting shared resources and assets that are connected to your family or your marital partner. So yeah, those are big themes for you for April. We had a full moon on the 6th that was at 16 degrees Libra. And so even though we're past that now that it's the 8th, we'll just talk about where that was hitting for the horoscope chart. It was in the area that represents your routines and your mundane kind of day-to-day, your health, and then also the subconscious and how, you know, your spiritual relationship to self is, and also relationship to potentially things that you do to escape mundane reality. And so whether that's through substance abuse, if you're not sober, you might have been reflecting on whether or not the relationship to those things is serving you, and what you need to do to kind of maybe cultivate more healthy relationship to your spirituality. If you're in recovery and you're already a spiritual person, you might have been in a place where you really leaned on your spirituality during this full moon, and doing some kind of ritual in that way was really positive for you. But, you know, you're kind of working through and processing some of the things that come up in the subconscious during that full moon time. It's more of a abstract kind of full moon. Like for some people, you know, you'll have a transit that is very much like about reality in this mundane way. But when this area of the chart is highlighted, it's more abstract, it's more spiritual, it's more about our connection to consciousness and our subconscious, our dreams. You know, what are our dreams telling us right now? And what are we working through? What does our soul want? You know, this is the soul house. What does our soul need right now? So that was a big theme for the Scorpio person during the full moon. And then we're going to have a solar eclipse on April 20th that is happening at 29 degrees Aries. And this is going to be happening in that house of health and routine. And so this is an opportunity for you. If you haven't been quite living the day-to-day routine that you would like to have for yourself, this solar eclipse is probably like a little bit of a kick in the butt, like a catalyst towards making that happen, or getting so fed up with yourself that you're like, I'm ready to make these changes, right? It's very Aries in that way of like, let's take action towards this. And then right after that, the sun and the moon move into Taurus and enter that relationship house. So again, there's a highlight on relationship. And then the next day, Mercury stations retrograde in your relationship house in Taurus. And so once again, like we've got all this energy kind of centered around needing to work on the communication dynamics with partnership, you know, and if it's not happening in your, like, if you are in a, you know, like, I try so hard to make everything as gender neutral as possible, but then sometimes I'm struggling. So I'm like, if you're not married, that's what I'm saying. If you're not married, but you're with somebody romantically, and you're in a position where you're negotiating things or talking about taking things to a next step, that's a big theme. If you're married, you know, and in a committed partnership, a lot of things like that will still be talked about. But even outside of romantic partnerships, if you have a best friend, let's say your romantic partnership is fine and you're not really working on anything, if you have a best friend, there could be some conflict or some kind of situation that comes up where you're working stuff out with them. If you're in a business partnership and there's money involved, this is also a signature of things like that coming up. So those are big themes for the end of April for the Scorpio chart, as well as the beginning of May. Like you have about a month of working through a lot of that kind of stuff. And then, you know, we'll be in Taurus season through that time at the end of April and the beginning of May. And so Taurus season, you know, the sun's going to be highlighting the area of relationships, which, you know, the sun brings vitality and life there, but it also shines a light on anything that needs to be figured out. So that's a big theme for you for the last half of April and the first part of May. And honestly, like, it's just interesting because one of the common themes that I feel like since I've started doing horoscopes that I see in a lot of the Scorpio chart with some of the communication transits that have happened is this theme. Like there's a big theme on working on communication, which I think is, you know, something we're all doing. But for some reason, I feel like some signs tend to get more harped on than others around that. And it's weird sometimes, like watching the way the chart, because, you know, it's all like I'm looking at a chart, you know, that's showing me what's getting highlighted and what planets are where and this and that. And it's just interesting to see kind of what our communication planets are doing for what signs at any given moment with the way things are moving. And it just feels sometimes that certain signs are highlighted in certain areas more than others for the month. And it's true, like that's true, but it's just, I don't know, astrology trips me out all the time. I'm always just like, wow, it's amazing. Very interesting. But anyways, that's your horoscope for the month of April. Good luck. I hope whatever you're working out in your personal relationships is constructive and that you find a lot of joy and peace and pleasure and resolution, because Venus is there and the sun is going to be there to bring peace and resolution and pleasure. So hopefully you can lean into that and find more ways to enjoy the people that you are sharing your life with. All right, good luck, and I will see you next month.